Alright, so for this presentation, we will be presenting to you guys some information that you're gonna need to know under Civil Aviation Regulations, Part 5, which is airworthiness. So the first thing is some general information and its applicability. So this regulation prescribes the requirements for certificate of aircraft and aeronautical components, issuance of certificate of airworthiness and other certifications for aeronautical products, continued airworthiness of aircraft and aeronautical components, rebuilding and modification of aircraft and aeronautical components, maintenance and preventive maintenance of aircraft and aeronautical components, aircraft inspection requirements, and air operator aircraft maintenance and inspection requirements. So basically, what's under this PCAR Part 5 airworthiness is just to keep the aircraft airworthy. So for some definitions, the purpose of Part 5, the following definitions shall apply. So the first one will be continuing airworthiness. So this means that set of processes by which an aircraft, engine, propeller, or part complies with the applicable airworthiness requirements and remains in a condition for safe operation throughout its operating life. And for the second definition, major modification. So we'll just pass by with some of these definitions since most of them are actually self-explanatory. So third one will be maintenance release, major repair, modification, preventative maintenance, and overhaul. And for the next one, some other definitions are rebuild, return to service, state of the design, state of manufacture, and state of registry. So all of these definitions are actually important since this defines very important information under the airworthiness of an aircraft. So here are some of the abbreviations. So the following acronyms are used in Part 5. So for the first one, AOC, this means Air Operator Certificate. Second one will be AMO, Approved Maintenance Organization. Next will be MEL, Minimum Equipment List. Next will be PIC, Pilot in Command. And last thing is the TSO, which stands for Technical Standard Order. So for the 5.2, PCAR Part 5.2 Aircraft and Component Original Certification. So its applicability, this subpart describes the procedures and designation of applicable rules for original certification of aircraft and related aeronautical products. The authority will hold this subpart reserved until such time that it has received an application for type certificates, production certificates, or other related approvals, including but not limited to airworthiness directives, supplemental type certificates, technical standard orders, and part manufacturer. An application for a production certificate for any aircraft or aeronautical product thereof for manufacture in the Republic of the Philippines shall comply with the certificate as required by the state of the design for approval. Such time as the application for production is presented, the authority will make available suitable regulations or provisions for the issuance of an air certificate of airworthiness. Airworthiness documents are appropriate for the product concerned. Any component, product installed or to be installed in a Philippine registered aircraft shall have an airworthiness approval tag traceable to an approved airworthiness standard accepted by the authority, issued by an authorized person on the basis of inspection and operation test, certifying that those products conform to a type of design included in a type of certificate validated by the authority and is in conditions for safe operations. So under this PCAR 5.2, all informations here about the certification um, that will give the aircraft the airworthiness. So this just means that it has been approved safe for flight for its life. So the next thing would be PCAR 5.3, which is supplemental type certificates. So its applicability is this prescribes procedural requirements for the issue of supplemental type certificates. So under this is issuance of supplemental type certificate. Any person who alters by introducing a major change in type of design not great enough to require a new application for a type certificate shall apply for a supplemental type certificate to the regulatory agency of the state of design and that approve the type certificate for the product or to the state of registry of the aircraft. The applicant shall apply in accordance with the procedures prescribed by that state. So basically, this just means that any changes that you will be making in an aircraft, you're gonna need a supplemental type certificate um, under the agency of the state of design. All right.
I'm here to discuss the Certificate of Airworthiness. This subpart prescribes procedure required for the issue of the Certificate of Airworthiness. Legibility: any registered owner of Republic of the Philippines registered aircraft or agent of the owner may apply for a Certificate of Airworthiness for that aircraft. Which applicant for Certificate of Airworthiness shall apply in the form of manner acceptable to authority. Classifications of Certificate of Airworthiness. Standard Certificate of Airworthiness will be issued for aircraft in the Pacific category and model designated by the state design the type of certificate. The authority may issue a special certificate of airworthiness in the form of restricted certificate or special flight permit. Amendment of Certificate of Airworthiness. The authority may amend or modify a certificate of airworthiness upon application from an operator on its own initiative. Transfer or surrender of Certificate of Airworthiness. An owner shall transfer a Certificate of Airworthiness to the lessee upon lease of an aircraft within or outside the Republic of the Philippines. To the buyer upon sale of the aircraft within the Republic of the Philippines. An owner shall surrender the Certificate of Airworthiness for the aircraft to the issuing authority upon the sale of the aircraft outside the Republic of the Philippines. Of a Certificate of Airworthiness, unless sooner surrendered, suspended, revoked, or a termination date is otherwise established by the authority. Certificates of airworthiness are effective as follows. Standard Certificate of Airworthiness, Special Certificate of Airworthiness, and Certificate of Airworthiness issued for restricted or limited category aircraft are effective for 1 year as long as the preventive maintenance, and the alterations are performed in accordance with the PCAR and the aircraft is registered in the Republic of the Philippines. Special flight permit is effective for the period of time specified in the permit. An experimental certificate for research and developer showing the compliance with the regulations crewing or market service is effective for 1 year after the date of issued or renewal unless the authority prescribes a shorter period. The duration of an experimental certificate issued for an operating amateur-built aircraft exhibition air racing operating primary kit-built aircraft unless the authority establishes a specific period for good cause. The owner, the owner, operator, or bailiff of the aircraft shall, upon request, make it available for inspection by the authority. Upon the suspension, revocation, or termination by the order of the authority of a certificate of airworthiness, the owner, operator, or bailee is an aircraft shall, upon request, surrender the certificate of the authority. When an aircraft imported for registration in the Republic of the Philippines has a certificate of airworthiness issued by another contracting state, the Republic of the Philippines may, as alternative to issuance of its own certificate of airworthiness, establish validity by suitable authorization to be carried with the former certificate of airworthiness, accepting it as equivalent of certificate of airworthiness issued by the Republic of the Philippines. The validity of authorization shall not extend beyond the period of the validity of the certificate of airworthiness or 1 year, whichever is less.
My name is Lijor S. Alamia and I'm here to discuss the PCAR Part 5 or the continued airworthiness of aircraft and components. So at this part, basically is for owners and operators to ensure that their aircraft is always airworthy at all times. And this section applies to all civil aircraft registered in the Philippines. So meaning to say all the aircrafts here in the Philippines, whether it operates both domestically and internationally, are are required to undergo several airworthiness processes and certifications. So the PCAR Part 5 basically obliges the owners and operators to provide a maintenance program for their aircraft. So technically our aircraft, so as they go on to continuous flights, their airworthiness status decreases because of tendencies of some parts might be loosened up, or the airframe structure might already be suffering from stress from non-stop operations. So it also states here that if the aircraft is leased, the leasee is the one responsible for this needed service and maintenance program. So as we all know in the business, if you lease a property or a vehicle, you are the one responsible for it in a span of period that is in your possession. So any aircraft upon undergoing continued airworthiness certification procedures, there are rules that should be implemented. So in here, number one is authorized personnel has access to the aircraft. So meaning this authorized person is the only one who can review the aircraft maintenance records, and this is only exclusive for the authorized personnel and the owner of the aircraft. So the authorized personnel is the one who certifies the aircraft that it is already airworthy. So each maintenance processes should reach the satisfactory rate in accordance with the prescribed method. So basically every maintenance procedures should always meet the minimum standard requirements for every task. And it is also necessary to record uncorrected maintenance items that will be submitted to the supervisor or the aircraft or the authorities. So in general, the part 5 gives us an overview on how unsafe conditions likely to exist, and there are requirements for every products for replacement or for repairs that should undergo requirements in order for them to be fully operated. So lastly, for the replacement and modification of parts, identifying which part are subjected for replacement. So it is important for us to identify what part or which part of the aircraft should be replaced in order for to request an approval or a recommendation based on the aircraft manufacturer's manual. So, and lastly, the damaged aircraft is an aircraft damage. It is required to undergo major maintenance, repair, or replacement process in order to identify the affected areas. So once an aircraft is damaged, its airworthiness is highly affected, so it will not be inoperable. And however, authorities will have to make a judgment whether it is no longer airworthy, or if the aircraft can be allowed to resume its flights. Thank you.
PCAR Part 5.6. PCAR Part 5.6 is all about aircraft maintenance and inspection. First, the applicability. This subpart prescribes rules governing the maintenance and inspection of any aircraft having a Republic of the Philippines Certificate of Airworthiness or associated aeronautical products. The next is persons authorized to perform maintenance, preventive maintenance, and modifications. Except as specified in letter B, the persons authorized to perform maintenance subject to this subpart include aviation maintenance technician. This subpart outlines the privileges and limitations of these entities with respect to the extent and type of work they may perform regarding maintenance, preventive maintenance, modification, inspection, and approvals for return to service. The next is persons authorized to perform maintenance. A licensed aviation maintenance technician and pilot may perform or supervise the maintenance or modification of an aircraft or aeronautical product for which he or she is rated subject to the limitation of Part 2, Section 2.4.4 of these regulations. The next is authorized personnel to approve for return to service. No person or entity other than the authority may approve an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part for return to service after it has undergone maintenance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding, or modification except licensed pilots and AMTs and AMO. Part 5.6.1.5 Persons authorized to perform inspections. No persons other than the authority may perform the inspections required by subpart 8.2.1.7 for the aircraft and aeronautical products prior to or after it has undergone maintenance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding, or modification except licensed pilot, AMT, and AMO. Preventive rules maintenance. Each person performing maintenance, preventive maintenance, or modification on an aeronautical product shall use the methods, techniques, and practices prescribed in the current manufacturer's maintenance manual or instructions for continued airworthiness prepared by its manufacturer. The methods, techniques, and practices contained in an AOC holder's maintenance control manual and continuous maintenance program as approved by the authority will constitute an acceptable means of compliance with the requirements of this. The next part is performance rules and inspections. In general, each person performing an inspection required by the authority shall perform the inspection so as to determine whether the aircraft or portions thereof under inspection meets all applicable airworthiness requirements. Letter B. Rotorcraft. Each person performing an inspection required on a rotorcraft shall inspect the following systems in accordance with the maintenance manual or instructions for continued airworthiness of the manufacturers concerned. The drive shafts or similar systems, the main rotor, transmission, gearbox for obvious defects, the main rotor and center section, and the auxiliary rotor on helicopters. Annual and 100-hour inspections. Each person performing an annual or 100 hours inspection shall use a checklist while performing the inspection. The checklist may be of the person's own design, one provided by the manufacturer of the equipment being inspected, or one obtained from another source. This checklist shall include the scope and detail of the items prescribed by the authority. The next part is performance rules, airworthiness limitations. Each person performing an inspection or other maintenance specified in an airworthiness limitation section of a current manufacturer's maintenance manual or instructions for continued airworthiness shall perform the inspection or other maintenance in accordance with that section or in accordance with specifications approved by the authority. The last part is performance rules, modification. All modifications and repairs must adhere to this document's airworthiness criteria. The CAAP or the state of design must approve the CAR, the proprietor or proprietorship shall make certain that the supporting data for conformity with the requirements for airworthiness are still in place. However, in the event of a substantial repair or replacement, substantial change, the work had to be carried out in compliance with technical specifications. That's all. Thank you.
PCAR Part 5.7 Maintenance Records and Content Form and Disposition of the Maintenance, Preventive Maintenance, Rebuilding and Modification Records. Each person who maintains performance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding aircraft or nautical product show number 1, description or reference to the date acceptable to the authority of the work performance. Number 2, completion date of the work performance. Number 3, name, signature, certificate number and kind of license held by the person approving the work. The signature constitute to the approval of the return service only for the work performance. The person performing the work shall enter required measure repairs and measure modifications. Person working under supervision of the aviation maintenance technical may not perform an inspection required in Part 8. Records overhauling and rebuilding. No person may be described any required maintenance entry form or nautical product as begin overhauling unless number 1, it has been disassembled, cleaned, inspected, permitted, repaired as necessary, reassembled using techniques. It has been tested accordance with the approval standard and technical date of the accordance with the current standard and technical date acceptable to the authority. No person may be described in any required maintenance entry or form aircraft overhauling or nautical product approval for return to the service after maintenance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding or modification. No person may approve for return service any aeronautical product that has undergone maintenance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding or modification unless number 1, the property maintenance record entry has been made, the repair or modification from analyzed by finished by the authority. If the repair modification results any change in the aircraft operating limitations or flight date concealed by the approved aircraft manual, content form and disposition of the records from inspection, maintenance records entries that person approving, disapproving return to the surface of the aeronautical product after any inspection. Number one, type of the inspection and prevent description of the extent of the inspection. Number two, date of the inspection and aircraft total time in service. Number three, signature to the license number, the license number and kind of license held by the person approving following for similar word system. If the aircraft not approved for return service because of the needed maintenance non-completion with the acceptable certifications. If the person constant under an inspection program provided in Part 8. Listing description. The person performing an inspection records who find that aircraft not an authority does not meet an acceptable type of the airworthy type of the certificate date shift airworthiness.